another top story this Thursday morning. A House committee released 23,000 documents related to Jeffrey Epstein.
Some documents show the convicted sex offender said, of course, President Trump knew about his relationships with underage girls. This comes as the House is advancing a discharge petition to release all files related to Epstein. Drew Petrimo joins us with the latest on this. And Drew, Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, they released these 3 email exchanges between Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell talking about this whole thing. Explain that to us.
Yeah, so this is information that comes from the House Oversight Committee through the Epstein estate. And so I think, obviously you have to couch this with a little bit because you're talking about the private emails of a convicted sex offender who is no longer with us and can't answer for any of these questions. But what it portrays is a relationship between Epstein and Trump that exceeds what Trump has publicly admitted to date. He says their relationship fell apart. He knew them back in the 80s and 90s, and there was a falling out, and has kind of really downplayed their relationship. But as you said here, these emails describe a relationship where Epstein says that Trump knew about the underage girls, had spent time with one of his victims at Epstein's mansion in Palm Beach, and that definitely goes farther than what the president has said publicly about their relationship. Now, you also have this issue of the discharge petition, right? So this is information, again, coming from the Epstein estate. There's also information that the Department of Justice and FBI has, and now that there is a 218th signature to that discharge petition, there's going to be a vote that is seeking to force the release of a different trove of information related to Jeffrey Epstein.
And some people on the Hill think as many as 40 Republicans could vote to release those documents.
I've heard numbers as high as 100 Republicans.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
There is going to be a lot of pressure. Once you get past the threshold of the discharge petition and the vote is actually going to happen, so now it's not an idea of trying to circumvent leadership, and because there's this argument from leadership. You hear Speaker Johnson talk about this. He's saying the Oversight Committee is getting this information and they're releasing, because look, this is where this information came from. So Speaker Johnson's line has been, the House Oversight Committee is doing this job. There's no need for this petition. Well, now that there's 218 signatures and you actually do circumvent the House leadership, now it actually comes to a vote, and you're talking about whether lawmakers are going to vote for release of information or against release of information. I think it's a lot more difficult for Republicans to say, even though they're getting pressure from the White House, we're not going to vote for this.
Yeah. All right, before we get to what the White House is saying about this, let's walk folks through these emails. We'll start in 2011, guys, and this is the full screen in A43. This is an email from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell saying, I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. The victim's name, who's been redacted, spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Now, we should say the Oversight Committee Republicans say the victim's name redacted there is Virginia Giuffre, who is no longer with us. She has publicly said that she never witnessed President Trump doing anything wrong. And then you have this email from 2015 that is really standing out to people as well.
Yeah, and this is from Wolf, his friend who's the writer. And Wolf told Epstein in an email to let Trump hang himself, as the two spoke about Trump being questioned on their relationship on CNN when he was running for president. So clearly, Epstein, at least in that moment, was skeptical of his relationship with Trump at that particular point and was willing to, let him hang himself.
And then you have the one from 2019. Again, this is while while Donald Trump is president, his first term. Epstein telling Michael Wolff that, again, as you mentioned, of course, Trump knew about the girls. He asked Ghislaine Maxwell to stop. Let's listen to what the White House press secretary said about this yesterday.
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep.
Clear, no official accusations of wrongdoing by the president's on the president's side. He has not been charged with anything, but this is certainly not going away.
Look, I think what she said there is kind of wrong in 2 different ways. It's actually right and wrong. It's right that there is no proof in these documents that the president did anything wrong. He hasn't been charged with a crime. Of course, that's true. But she also said that it's proof that he did nothing wrong. And I don't think there's proof in that he did nothing wrong. There's not proof that he did something wrong. So I think that's why it's going to be interesting to see what more information comes out. Like, this is obviously new information after all these years and after all this kind of feeling like at times this case was going to be done. You know, there has been this indication that they weren't going to, in the beginning of the Trump administration, that there was nothing else left, right? So this is new information and kind of paints the relationship between the president and Jeffrey Epstein in a different light. We'll have to see what else comes out of both these troves. You know, you have the Epstein estate and you have what is being held by the Department of Justice.
This is such a big issue because this was an issue during the campaign. This was something the president had promised to get to the bottom of. So it's an issue that's potentially vulnerable for him depending on what happens.
Yep.
Thank you, Drew.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the time, as always.